Okay, so I came across this super interesting study that was posted on Twitter the other day, and it resonated with me in terms of a lot of things that I've dealt with that a lot of other people have dealt with in their life. And so the core idea of this study was a wondering mind is an unhappy mind. And it made a ton of sense after you actually read through it. So the study in question, it involved 2,250 adults, mostly male, largely in the US, with an average age of about 34 years old. And so these participants were randomly prompted just at any point throughout the day to answer a two-part question. So first, how are you feeling right now on a scale of 0 to 100? And then what are you doing right now? And then there was a list of like 20, 22 activities on there that they could pick. And so the kicker was when there was then another question that said, are you thinking about something other than what you are doing right now? And these people had four options. They had no, yes, something pleasant, yes, something neutral, or yes, something unpleasant. And so the first was that minds wander frequently, regardless of activity. And so nearly half of the time, our minds are elsewhere when we're doing anything. So the next was real world mind wandering is a lot far higher than lab settings. And so, because people have run these tests all the time, but it's always in a lab. And so it's probably not a super genuine representation due to just, people want to perform well in typical lab tests. But the nature of our activities and the things that we do only has a modest impact on whether our minds wander and almost no impact on whether those wandering thoughts are going to be pleasant or unpleasant. Meaning there's a little bit more of it's 100% based on us and what we do. And so the third point was what you are thinking matters more than what you are actually doing relative to your happiness or your sense of fulfillment. And so the most interesting takeaway was the content of people's thoughts was a better predictor of their happiness than the thing that they were actually doing, that they were engaged in. And so like your mind wandering and going other places, especially if you're somebody like me that has ADHD or, kind of deals with that, gets distracted easily, it's largely independent of what we are physically doing and the thoughts that we have that are relating to it. And so how does this deal with, us being depressed? Our sense of control is a very simple ratio of active challenges to passive challenges. It's not the absolute number of things that you're dealing with. It is the ratio of things that you choose to things that you don't choose. And so if you raise your ratio of the active problems and things that you choose compared to the passive ones, you will raise your life. And that comes from Dr. K over at Healthy Gamer. If you haven't watched him, fantastic content. I've learned a lot through that guy. But half of adults in the US report some sense of loneliness, and more than 1 in 10 have taken or do currently take antidepressants in the last year. And Harvard actually found that mind wandering predicts unhappiness better than the thing that we are actually doing. And so what this means for us is that the issue isn't what's going on outside of us. It's not what's in the external world. It's that we have lost our sense of mission and our sense of agency. And so it's not overwhelm that is, destroying our minds and destroying our sense of purpose or the things that we're doing in our life, but it's the fact that we're not aligned with what we actually want to do. So we've got full calendars, but our consciousness and our mind is empty of things that we find meaningful. And so as the world continues to progress and goes faster with AI and everything, our lives are efficient, but they're not engaging. And so this is why a wandering mind equals an unhappy mind. And so when you don't have a self-chosen quest of some kind, your attention is going to scatter because deep down there is something that we are looking for. There is a feeling within us of something that we want to do, something that actually means something to us, no matter what it is. And so that collapse is what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls like disordered consciousness. And this is whenever we start to feel existential dread. And so we start questioning everything. We question our work, our relationships, our identity. And it's not so much a lack of like happiness in a sense, because we tend to get some of that every now and again, but it's a lack of order. It is a lack of order and a way that we can direct our thoughts towards things. And so you can't think your way out of this. You can't think about the purpose that you have or the purpose that you want and just try to find it. It comes through actually committing. You can only act your way out. And so order doesn't return through an understanding of the world, which is what we think. And that's why we go and learn and try to, find all the answers to everything. We're on YouTube, we're listening, we're educating ourselves, right? But that feeling of purpose and fulfillment comes back, and that quest comes through actually committing to finding the thing, right? So we call it burnout or depression, but it's really just directional starvation or a lack of directionality. And so if you've ever read Flow, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about how happiness depends on where your attention goes. So flow is a total absorption in a meaningful challenge, and meaning is so subjective. What it is dependent on you, and that's why you have to actually choose it. And so if something is too easy or just not super meaningful to us, then we just get bored. If it's too hard, then we get anxiety. And so you see this a lot, but the sweet spot comes from finding that middle ground, because at that point, our self-consciousness kind of dissolves. And so we're not thinking so much about everything else other than the activity itself. And so this sense of presence that people talk about, it's not total relaxation. It's actually immersion in the thing that you're doing. And so when you're immersed, that mind wandering stops. And so that's why a sense of presence, when you're super there in the moment, feels like peace. And it's not because life is necessarily easy in that moment, but it's because your attention is ordered and you're not thinking about 1,000 different things. You are just living in the now. And so without a quest of some kind to organize our attention, our consciousness starts to just default to chaos, because we have an innate desire to find and make order in things. So back to something I had kind of previously highlighted, people think, we tend to think that purpose is found like treasure, right? Like we're just going to come upon it, but it's actually crafted through doing things more consistent. And from my own experience, I've noticed whenever I just decide to do something and just do it regardless of what the payoff could be, and I'm just doing it because it's something I'm genuinely interested in, my life tends to get better and my mental health starts to actually improve as well. And so our listening to Dr. K and some of these other people, what I've kind of picked up on is our brains don't really care what we actually pick. It cares that we just pick some, because every single time that you commit, dopamine rewires to progress, right? And so then all of a sudden our brain is like, okay, this actually matters. And so the purpose of this is that our attention is going to stay put long enough to actually build feedback loops back into the system. But one of the issues that a lot of us fall into is we either quit too early or we try too many things. And a lot of times it can be a combination of both. And this is something that I'm guilty of, right? And so they're both symptoms of actual external motivation. Just say taking things that the world says we should do. And this goes from all the way from just go to school, go to college, do that, but also what the internet marketing is telling us. If you are an ambitious person and you want to have a business, you have marketers telling you, oh, you have to have a business. You can't work a 9-to-5 job because you're an NPC. That they are also influencing you. And you are just as susceptible to that as the society, to go to school or go to college, get a job, go into massive debt. So we never feel aligned with the thing that we're doing because our drive is borrowed. It's not true internal. It's not something that we want to actually do. It's not meaning that we have made. And so I hope that you can understand, you're not necessarily lazy. We are just off mission. We are off the things that we actually give a shit. And so then the question becomes how do we kind of rebuild just this sense of purpose? I'm not going to act like I know everything there is to know about getting purpose, but I do know how to actually make progress, and I do know what actually gets me out of funks, and I know what has helped me in terms of having at least some feeling of a type of purpose in my life, whatever you want to call it. Purpose, goal, doesn't really matter. It all means, but this is where self-determination theory comes in. And basically, there's a few different steps. So the first is autonomy. We just have to make choices for ourselves. And so people who tend to have a sense of purpose ultimately make choices. People who don't have choices made for them. The external world tells them what to do. And so instead of asking what is the right choice, because that is implying that there is a right and wrong. Therefore, that is the external telling you what you should do. You just make the call because you want to. The moment I started doing more things and justified it with because I want to, the better I started to feel. And so just do things for the sake of it and just because you want to, and everything else kind of reveals itself as it's going. And so the second is competence. So this is where you have to stress yourself. You have to stretch yourself. You have to push yourself. And so purpose or mission or your quest, it's going to grow at the edge of kind of what your current ability is to what you want to actually have. And so sometimes you have to push slightly beyond it, a little bit, not too much, just a little bit more than what you're maybe comfortable of or capable of. Even if you fail, it's going to raise confidence because you prove to yourself that you can act. So you improved your own self-trust in this whole process. And so then the third is going to be relatedness. So this is where you finally see yourself as being you. And therefore, there is a whole other level of confidence that comes from that. And so that meaning that you have is going to deepen when others recognize that your real self is there. And so it's hard now, but that connection back, getting feedback from the external world is what is going to continue to reinforce it until it is an automatic response for you. And so at the beginning, I read a quote about what Dr. K had said about, the ratio, right? Most things in life, whenever it comes to these complicated things, come down to it. And so control in your life is not about reducing the amount of problems. It is simply about raising the ratio of the challenges that you choose to do versus those that the world gives you or the things that hit you that you did not choose. So the more things that you choose that you have challenges to, the more of a sense of purpose versus when the world is giving you problems that you did not choose, even though it's going to happen, if that number is greater than the challenges that you are giving yourself, that is where we start to lose this sense of purpose and this lack of momentum and feeling in our own lives. And so when we get all these passive challenges, we tend to want to just kind of pull away and distract ourselves doing other things or lie to ourselves about how, this is just part of life. But that's whenever we get more chaos from it. And so if you just choose one active, bigger challenge, there's going to be a lot of smaller active challenges within it. And usually what happens is that ratio starts to flip on its head to where now you have more things that you are choosing to have, like the challenges that you are actually choosing. That's ultimately control because problems are going to happen. So would you rather the problems be the ones that you choose or the problems that the world decides to choose for you? And so depression, anxiety, all these things that myself and many others deal with, it's usually a lot of times it just comes from a lack of connection. Like we're just disconnected. And it's just committing to the fact that like we are going to start doing things that we want to do just because we actually want to. Don't live a hedonistic lifestyle to where all you just do is go after pleasure, because I guarantee there are multiple things in people's lives that they can find meaning. Just find something that you can get absorbed in, whether it could be knitting, but just do something that you are actually choosing to do. And so just choose a quest, any quest, and build your life around it until your attention finally belongs to you again. And that is whenever doors are going to start to open and you're going to start to see other opportunities that you didn't necessarily see before.